everyone, Xanaro Gaming coming at y'all with another video, and in today's video, yes, I have the pie chart made for everyone, and wow, this was a doozy of information to put together. Just to go over and preference the start of this video, if you haven't watched the video before this where I go over all the top decks from our local webcam tournaments from the unionarena trading card game community, and it is also including people's locals that they upload to the exburst.dev site. Please go and watch that video first. That way you have some kind of context to this video. And just to preference, this is the top 52 decks here. So I pulled from data of almost 200 participants in all of these tournaments, which puts this at about the top 25% of the performing decks currently in the trading card game for us here, right? And this is a lot. This is a good problem to have, is all these different decks. Now, while this is probably super diverse, this is definitely the biggest video I've ever done, compiling information. You can see all these different decks that are topping here. Take this into account. Like I said, I took a lot of different tournaments here, and so that does kind of skew things as where we can't count this as maybe one humongous big 200-man tournament, because then in that sense the tournament average of these, I took the top 3 and that really pulls in more decks. But the main thing of this is to show what decks have been, doing well in local settings and what people are wanting to play, right? That's what I'm trying to convey here. So this pie chart is crazy. Yes, there are a lot of decks, yes, but I do think that we can take a lot from this video and from this information. So with all of that preference out of the way, this is what the pie chart looks like, right? A gloppy, crazy mix of color mess. I did find out actually how to sort it in order. Everyone asked for that, and it was not as easy as you think. I had to go and mess through all the settings here to, put this in an order that it looks a lot better. I do think this looks a lot better. At the end of the half of this video, I'm sorry I'm preferencing so much. I really want people to take this information into account. I will take only the top decks from each of the tournaments and make a different pie chart for everyone so we can see what decks were the winning decks from the tournament. And I think that that will give a lot of people a better sense of what the top decks are and not so much what the meta is. I think that this definitely shows a bigger representation of the meta and what people are playing in the game. And I think that the pie chart I make at the end for only the winning decks will show a little bit better about what is actually the best winning tournament decks. But everything preference out of the way, 3 minutes into the video. Sorry about that. Let's get into it. You can see here the big winner of this past week of tournaments. Like I said, I pulled from over 12 different tournaments, almost 200 players. I think it ended up being 198 players. And this is the top 52 decks, the top 3 to 4. From all those tournaments, all these tournaments averaging between, 4 and 28 players, right? And the big winner was Blue SAO. This deck did absolutely amazing numbers this past 2 weeks since the set has come out. You can see here it takes up the biggest percentage of the pie chart, and that being 17.3% with 9 wins. I do think that this is a recency bias, right? The unionarena trading card game is always going to be something that is a recency bias because we have so many set drops and a lot of people want to play those decks right when they come out, and they're going to be the most played decks. So really a good tell will be, in the next 2 weeks. The next video will probably show a little bit better. But to see here 9 tops in all these tournaments, Blue Sword Art Online is a powerful and consistent deck, and I think that it needs to be respected. I think in the community, a lot of other content creators, there's no blame or fault their own, but I thought a lot of people were giving too much hype to the green SAO deck and not giving enough respect to the Blue Sword Art Online deck. And I do think that this is one of the premier aggression decks in the game, and I think it's in a good spot in occurrence when green onepunchman before this was so prevalent, right? And I do think that Blue Sword Art Online goes into these build 'em up decks a lot better than the green Sword Art Online deck does. But for anyone that is only listening and not watching the video, Sword Art Online, the blue deck, the Kirito Asuna deck, is taking up 17.3% of the tops, making it 9 out of 52. So that is really, really good numbers. 9 toppings is a lot. And to be noted, a lot of people were on this deck. It was the most played deck in the meta by far. I don't have the exact percentages, but it is the number 1 ranked deck that people played. The second ranked deck was green SAO, and then the third and fourth decks were the blue JJK, green codegeass, and then from that point on, everything else was pretty normal. But blue SAO is the main winner in the last 2 weeks. And now touching on the green SAO deck. This deck did tie with blue JJK, which I think is a solid thing to do when the set is first coming out. The blue JJK players did not go anywhere. And these green SAO players came in full force, being the second most played deck, but getting the same amount of toppings as Blue JJK, whereas Blue JJK didn't have quite as many people playing this deck the last couple of weeks, but still seeing really good tops. And I think that that is something to say for itself for us to be able to see in the future here. Let me see if I hope this doesn't mess it up. Oh God, it did. Maybe if I could just, that might be a little bit better for everyone. There we go. There we go. Sorry. Doing a little editing through it. But yes, green Sword Art Online, the Kirito and Xenon deck, mainly a Xenon deck. Kirito is just the top end that helps you get everything going. And the blue JJK both respectively got 5 tops, and they are the only 2 decks to get 5. There is a drop off after this one. And this deck just did so amazing. Both of these decks really strong, but very, very different decks. I think in the sense where green SAO is strictly kind of a later game control value deck, and the blue JJK does a little bit of everything. We've seen this deck. It's not going anywhere. But those two bringing up 5 tops, taking up almost 10% of all the tops. And then that is, you know, really, really good numbers from these 3 decks. These are definitely the 3 top performing decks by far in all of this. And I think that this is no surprise to anyone, right? I think maybe the only thing that is probably surprising to some people is that blue SAO did show out as the best deck from the last 2 weeks and not being green SAO. But I think that that has to do with the high rolling factor that blue SAO can do in the game, right? But I want to do the math real quick on the spot, just kind of adding up what this percentage ends up being for these 3 decks. Sorry I didn't do this ahead of time. 6 plus 9.6, which ends up being, you know, about, yeah, like 36%, almost 37, 36.5% of the meta is these 3 decks. And I think that that is a healthy spot to be in, to have 3 decks doing really, really well in the meta is not anything crazy. None of these decks being at the 50%. I think once a deck gets to 50% is where people have to really worry. But take that into account. This is the first couple weeks of Sword Art Online coming out. I think that this will change a little drastically as we go further and further into the set release. But going down the line, the big winner of this weekend, and I am very surprised to see this actually, is that green codegeass, the Suzaku deck, got 4 tops. Now, granted, this was by 2 of these tops was by the same player in different tournaments, so shout out to them. I can't recall the name. I didn't write it down in my notes. I'm sorry, but shout out to you. And then the other 2 bringing it up. But green codegeass getting the tops in these tournaments is really, really cool. Suzaku got 4 tops, the only deck with 4, bringing up 7.7% of the tops throughout these last couple weeks of tournaments. And like I said, this is really cool. I love to see this in the metagame. A lot of people were probably going into this. I think that green Suzaku and green Sword Art Online, this matchup will be really, really iconic going into the future, because I do think that if green Suzaku sees all their stuff, they can end games a lot faster than green Sword Art Online can. But I do think that green Sword Art Online has some better ways of controlling the board. But whenever Suzaku is able to get down that air cavalry and just pop a body, then that just feels so good. And I think that that's why this deck did really, really well with so many different players on the green SAO and blue JJK. Now, I think that the blue SAO probably did so well because there was a lot of players on the green codegeass deck and the purple codegeass in this meta that we've had the last couple weeks. But shout out to the green codegeass players doing well with 7.7%. And then coming up, following down the chart, we have A lot of decks that all got 3 tops each. I say a lot, but 3 of them. Yellow Demon Slayer, the brother sister combo. Red One Punch Man. I lumped this in with Garo and Speedo Sound Sonic. I know that one of these was mainly strictly a Speedo Sound Sonic deck, and then the other 2 were some kind of hybrid. It was really hard to tell on this one exactly what the builds were from the list and from the images I was provided. So take this into account. This is just Red One Punch Man, Speedo Sound Sonic, Garo kind of decks. I know one was really just a Garo deck and one was just a speed, but it was a little confusing for me. But I clumped these together because of that reasoning. All 3 of the deck lists kind of sharing a lot of cards. But nothing to scoff out there. And then green One Punch Man Saitama bringing up 3 tops, which is obviously the big bad of the meta before this point. But I think a lot of people just were not playing a lot of these decks on the in here, except some of the new ones. And I think that they were trying some of these new decks. I don't think that this means that green One Punch Man is going anywhere. I do think it will still be the catalyst of what a meta deck needs to do to win a game if you can get through this deck. But really awesome to see the diversity of this kind of second tier of decks here, kind of taking up 5, 10, 15, 20, 22% of the tops from the last 2 weeks. I don't think that any of these decks are going anywhere. They're all really, really good. And it is awesome to see all this aggression, right? We got the brother sister Demon Slayer deck combo. We got the red One Punch Man aggression, all coming up pretty well. Especially if you take into account the Blue Sword Art Online deck, right? That's 3 really strong aggro decks that are topping in these tournaments. And on the other end of things, you have, a lot of the control aspects from the green, codegeass, One Punch Man, and now the SAO. And then blue JJK being kind of a really good Jack of all trades deck, sitting in the middle there. But all 3 of those decks getting 3 toppings is really cool. Shout out to all the players that played those. Now, coming up down the end here, we do have a lot of decks, and I think that this is a great thing to show that if you love a deck, you could take it into a tournament and hopefully get a top. Maybe not compete with some of getting a tournament winning as some of these other decks did, but we have a lot of decks that are 2 wins, and I'm going to go down these pretty quick, just showing them, and then I'll give my thoughts on them a little bit further, right? So, from the Yellow Sword Art Online decks, we had 4 toppings. Now, I did split these decks because these decks are both very different and newer, and I wanted to show that. I do think that the Goddess deck does take a little bit from the Integrity Knights deck, but that is not to be confused. They are 2 very, very different decks. Both of those decks got toppings, and I'm glad to see that because I think that both of those decks are good sleeper picks and are maybe some of the decks that people were not thinking would do really well, or maybe that were slept on a little bit more from this set, right? We also have 2 yellow One Punch Man Saitamas, 2 yellow One Punch Man Sister, 2 purple codegeass, and 2 Kurapika decks. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different decks all getting 2 toppings here. And you see all of these decks just bringing up a good, almost about 4% of the meta. Sorry, from these toppings. And I think that that's really good. I'm really happy to see the Kurapika showing up. Obviously, I was one of these players. And then also, oh my God, he's in the server all the time. I forget your name, buddy, but you as well with the Kurapika. And then Purple Code showing up, maybe not in as big a force as people would maybe think, but like I said, Sword Art Online did just come out, so a lot of these decks are going to be, snagging up a bigger percentage than they maybe would otherwise in the play percentage, because the play percentage of Purple Code was down. It was not in the top 4 decks played. It was still pretty high, but not as much as even the One Punch Man decks. But recency bias in unionarena is a thing. And we see 2 of the yellow One Punch Man Saitamas. This one is a little surprising to see it, not a little higher. I know the Sword Art Online's decks came in full force, but maybe just the blue SAO being able to sneak out these wins really fast against the green One Punch Man and the yellow One Punch Man decks is helping to, push those decks down a little bit because it is so aggressive and it can swing. If you have everything perfect, you can swing for 7 checks. Because of the double tacker, if you had the other. Now, that's living in the dream world, right? But I have seen very, very often in a consistent amount of every 1 to 2 or 3 games where people do the full 5 swing combo, and it is no joke. One Punch Man, all these decks are just so strong, right? We have yellow One Punch Man Saitama, yellow One Punch Man Sisters getting 2 tops each. Just really, really strong decks. The green One Punch Man, all of the One Punch Man decks just showing up in full force, showing how strong that set really, really is. Now, going to the Sword Art Online decks, we have 2 tops from the yellow Integrity Knights and 2 tops from the Goddess deck. The Goddess deck is definitely a kind of pseudo-aggressive deck that takes its life to get value, so it is very consistent in how aggressive it is, but the payoff for that aggression is not nearly as high as these other aggro decks, so don't get that confused. This is like a pseudo-aggro deck, but with taking your life for value, and the payoff isn't a lot, but this deck can, you know, just sweep you really fast if you're not prepared to block some of these early swings that they're able to do. The deck is really consistent and it gets online. But I think that the fact that you have to take your life makes it a really risky deck to play. And then to note on the yellow Sword Art Online Integrity Knights deck, I think that, like I said, this is a sleeper deck. I think this deck is very, very powerful. We will start to see some pilots who take this deck and really love it and put their own, you know, stamp on this deck to figure out exactly, you know, what they want to do with it. I do think it is a strong deck that is a jack of all trades, and you should be looking out for this deck to show up in your tournaments for sure. Now, going down the line, we have so many other decks that got a 1 topping throughout these, and these are probably more of your fringe decks, right? But I did want to bring these in. I think if I took these all out, this other rest of the pie chart, the 3.8 percentages and up, are essentially all the decks that people expect, right? All the decks that if I probably took out and had just the topping decks later, like I said, I was going to do that, but this video is already running. I always have so much to say. I'm sorry, guys. But I'll post the image, or so I'll do something to do it, or I'll add it to the end of the video. But I think that you could take this percentage of the pie chart, that like 75, 80%, that we are sitting here from Kurapika around to the blue SAO, and I think that that is a good representation of what the like main meta strong decks in the game actually are. And I think that, you know, these decks that are, you know, sneaking up these random tops are all the rogue decks that can do really well if you do a good job building your deck and then showing, you know, what you can do as a deck builder and a player. But let's go through these, right? 1 yellow Megumi top. That is probably the Megumi guy. I'll forget his name too. I'm learning everybody. I'm still new to the community the last couple months on the servers. 1 yellow JJK Gojo deck. Yes, a Gojo deck. 1 purple Bleach deck. Bleach is obviously one of the older sets in the game, and it is still cool to see that Bleach is able to do it, and it is going to get some support. I think that that will shoot it back up into these standings. I think a lot of people are just not playing the deck because it is so much older, but I do think it is still a strong deck. 1 Moose on top, 1 green One Punch Man Metal Bat top, 1 Gone and Friends top, 1 Demon Slayer Red Tengen deck top, another aggro deck, and then 1 Blue Bomber deck. Joey doing the work here with the Blue Bomber, showing that Blue Bomber is a really good deck into certain matchups, being able to control the board, right? So that gives everyone who plays these, you know, rogue decks. I think that with the introduction of Sword Art Online, it really puts a lot of these other decks that were keeping some of these decks from topping able to come back in the game. And I think you will see random one-off tops from a lot of these rogue fringe decks in your future tournaments, because now the deck just gets more and more enveloped with all these good decks. We are in such a good space. I can't think of a better like game that I've played. I've played a lot of card games. Union Arena is in an amazing spot where there are so many amazing decks that you could play, and just about everything is viable. Now, granted, we do have, I think, all these decks that are going to be the meta decks, but if you take the time into a Union Arena deck and you really love it and it has some good tools, you can find a way to get a top in one of your tournaments, at least on the local beta level, if not into, you know, some of these regional levels when we are able to have those tournaments. But that is the pie chart. I will, you know, have this pie chart, a better picture of it for you guys at the end of the video for everyone to go into. Sorry, a little thunder. I was like, what's going on here? But I will try to have a picture posted at the end of the video that you guys can maybe screenshot or download a little bit better. But that is the meta report for these local tournaments. Leave this video a like. Subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to work really hard to bring you guys all this information. Let me know what y'all think about these videos. I want tips. I want to get better at doing this stuff for everybody. Let me know what deck surprised you on this topping list. Like, are you a Blue Bomber fan? Were you surprised about this? Is everyone sleeping on Purple Bleach? And it actually is a really good deck. I want to hear what everyone has to say, but I appreciate everyone hanging out with me. This is so much fun to do. It was a lot of work, so I hope, everyone gets a lot out of this, but I'm looking forward to coming back to everyone in the next, 7 to 10 days, give the community some more time to get some, tournaments in, and then look to see where this pie chart compares to the next one. But I appreciate everyone hanging out with me today. Like I said, leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Peace.